The church holds 84 people when it's full. On a good Sunday, you get 61. On a bad one, you get 40. And you count every empty seat because every empty seat is a bill you can't pay and a person you couldn't reach and a version of yourself you're not sure you're becoming fast enough. You didn't start preaching for money. That came later. You started because you were 19 and your mother was dying and a pastor sat with you in a hospital corridor for 4 hours without checking his phone once. He didn't fix anything. He just stayed. You decided that night that staying was the most important thing a person could do for another person. You built your entire life around that decision. 12 years later, you have a congregation, a wife, 2 daughters, a church roof that leaks in 3 places, and $4,200 in the operating account that needs to cover salaries, utilities, and the van that takes elderly members to service every Sunday. The math has never worked. You've made it work anyway through a combination of faith and personal debt that your wife knows about and a second credit card she doesn't. You are not a fraud. You want to be clear about that. You are just a man trying to hold something together that was never designed to be easy. Brother Caldwell has more money than anyone else in your congregation and has never let you forget it. He tithes generously and sits in the front row and has opinions about your sermon length that he shares without being asked. He comes to your office on a Tuesday with an envelope and a request. His construction company is bidding on a city contract. He needs a letter of recommendation from a community leader attesting to his character and his company's commitment to the neighborhood. He slides the envelope across your desk before you can answer. Inside is $3,000 cash. You should give it back. Brother Caldwell is not a bad man exactly, but he is not the man the letter would describe. His workers are underpaid. His contracts have complaints attached to them. Writing the letter would be a transaction, not a testimony. You think about the roof. You think about the van. You think about Sister Patricia, who has been bringing her own toilet paper to church for 3 months because you ran out of budget for supplies and were too embarrassed to ask for donations again. You write the letter. Brother Caldwell gets the contract. Nobody notices. The roof gets patched. The van gets serviced. Sister Patricia doesn't have to bring toilet paper anymore. That's the problem. And the opportunity. Nothing bad happened, which means nothing stops it from happening again. By month 4, you have what you'd call a tiered relationship with truth. There is what you preach, which you still believe mostly. There is what you tell your wife, which is that things are getting better, which is true, just not in the way she thinks. And there is what happens in your office on Tuesday afternoons, which is that people with problems and money come to you and leave with solutions. And you deposit the difference into an account you opened at a different bank than the one that handles church finances. Your wife says you seem less tired. You tell her God has been giving you peace. She holds your hand during dinner and says she's been praying for that. You let her pray. You accept the gratitude for a peace that doesn't exist because the alternative is a conversation you don't know how to have. The first lie is hard. By the 40th, it's just weather. The letters and references are small money. Consistent, but small. $2,000 here. $1,500 there. Enough to stop the bleeding, but not enough to get ahead. That changes when you discover something about your congregation that you already knew but had never thought to use. People don't just come to church for God, they come because they are frightened. They come because the diagnosis came back wrong and the marriage is failing and the son won't return calls and the account is overdrawn and they need someone to tell them that the universe is paying attention to their suffering. They come because belief is cheaper than therapy and more available than family. And you are standing at the front of the room with a microphone and 12 years of practice, making people feel heard. You start offering private prayer sessions, 30 minutes in your office, personal prophetic guidance, a word from the Lord specifically for your situation. The suggested donation is $150. You are careful to say suggested. Nobody pays less than $150. Most pay more. The sessions are not entirely dishonest. You listen carefully. You ask the right questions. You have 12 years of reading people's faces and understanding what they need to hear. When Sister Monroe comes in crying about her son, and you tell her God hasn't forgotten him, you believe that when you say it. When Brother James comes in terrified about his business and you pray over him with authority and tell him breakthrough is coming, some part of you means it. But you have also noticed that the people who give more get more specific prophecies. The ones who slide an extra 100 across the desk receive words that feel tailored, personal, almost too accurate to be coincidence. Because they are not coincidence. You have been paying attention. You know who is sick and who is struggling and who just lost a parent and who is desperate enough to need a miracle badly enough to pay for one. That is the line you told yourself you would never cross. You cross it on a Wednesday afternoon with a woman named Renee who is 43, recently divorced, and has been coming to your church for 4 months with the specific energy of someone who has decided faith is her last option. She pays $300 for the session. You tell her God showed you she is entering a season of restoration, that what was taken will be returned double, that she should plant a seed of faith to activate the promise. Planting a seed means giving money. You don't say it that way. You say God is asking her to demonstrate her belief through sacrifice. She writes a check for $500 on the spot. You pray over it with both hands raised. She leaves with tears on her face and hope in her chest, and you sit in your office afterward and look at the check for a long time. You deposit it in the account at the other bank. Renee comes back the following month. And the month after that. Each time the word gets slightly more specific. Each time the seed gets slightly larger. She tells people in the congregation that you changed her life, that you have a genuine gift. 3 of her friends join the church within 6 weeks. 2 of them book private sessions immediately. The session income alone is pulling in $6,000 a month. Added to the letters, the references, the quiet arrangements with people like Brother Caldwell, the account at the other bank now has a balance that makes you feel something you haven't felt since before the roof started leaking. Not peace exactly. Something harder than peace. Security has its own feeling when you've lived without it long enough. Sister Gloria has been in your church for 9 years. She is 67, diabetic, recently widowed, and has the kind of faith that makes you feel ashamed of your own on the days it's working correctly. She brings food to sick members. She calls people on their birthdays. She stays after every service to fold chairs without being asked. She is also convinced that if she believes hard enough, her diabetes can be healed without insulin. You have never encouraged this. You have also never clearly discouraged it. There is a version of faith you preach on Sunday mornings that lives in the space between miracle and medicine. And you have been careful never to close that space entirely, because the people who live in that space give generously and stay loyal and fill seats that would otherwise be empty. A visiting minister comes through your church for a revival weekend. He lays hands on Sister Gloria and declares her healed. The congregation erupts. Sister Gloria weeps. You stand at the side of the stage and feel something move through you that isn't the Holy Spirit. You don't stop it. The offering that weekend is $11,000, more than you've collected in any single weekend in 12 years of ministry. Sister Gloria stops her insulin for 11 days because she was healed in your church, under your roof, while you stood at the side of the stage and felt $11,000 worth of reasons not to intervene. Her daughter calls you from the emergency room on a Wednesday. Sister Gloria's blood sugar crashed. She's stable but frightened. You go immediately, you pray. You hold her hand the way that Pastor held yours in a hospital corridor when you were 19 and your mother was dying. You stay 2 hours. You don't check your phone once. On the drive home, you think about that for a long time. The staying, what it used to mean, what it costs now. There is a man named Deacon Reeves who joined your church 8 months ago with a generous spirit and a financial background and questions about your bookkeeping that he frames as offers to help. He knows about Brother Caldwell. He knows about the revival weekend. He knows about the private sessions and the account at the other bank. You don't know how he knows these things. You should have asked sooner. He comes to your office on a Tuesday and explains his proposal quietly. A network of investors looking for a faith-based vehicle for certain funds. Untraceable donations processed through nonprofit accounts. Your church receives a percentage for facilitating the transfers, clean on paper, standard language. Nobody gets hurt. You tell him no, you're done. He nods slowly and asks if your board of elders knows about the account at the other bank. Says he has documentation going back 14 months. Dates, amounts, names. Says the IRS tip line accepts anonymous submissions and that the person who reported a church in a neighboring county last year received a portion of the recovered funds. He's not threatening you. He's just explaining how things work. You don't sleep that night or the next one. You call him back 72 hours later and tell him you'll process the first transfer. There is a young man in your congregation named David. He is 24, recently released from a situation he doesn't discuss openly, trying to rebuild from almost nothing. He volunteers every Sunday without being asked. He is applying for a position at a nonprofit that does background checks and requires a character reference from a community leader. You write his letter. You mean every single word of it. David is exactly the person the letter describes. Careful, honest, changed in ways that are visible and real. He gets the job. He calls you from the parking lot of the nonprofit crying. Says the church saved his life. Says he used to think God had forgotten people like him, and now he knows different. Says God used you specifically to show him that. You tell him God did that, not you. He says both can be true. You think about that for days. The version of you that wrote David's letter and the version of you that processes transfers for Deacon Reeves on the second Thursday of every month exist in the same body, drive the same car, sleep in the same bed next to the same woman, preach from the same pulpit every Sunday morning. You have not found a way to hold those two things simultaneously without one of them being a lie. You have stopped trying to find the way. That's its own kind of answer. You are standing at the pulpit on a Sunday morning and the church is full, more than full. Chairs along the walls, people standing near the back, a waiting list for the private sessions that now books 3 weeks out. The ministry is growing in every measurable way. Your wife is in the third row with your daughters and the expression she gets when she's proud of you without wanting to make it obvious. You are preaching about integrity. You chose the text 3 weeks ago without knowing it would feel like this when you finally got here. Sister Gloria is in her usual seat, insulin adjusted, faith intact, smiling at you the way she always has. She doesn't know what you didn't do. Renee is 4 rows back, pen in hand, taking notes on the sermon the way she has every week since you told her God was restoring what was taken. David is near the back in a collared shirt, new job, new life, his whole posture different from the man who first walked through your doors 8 months ago. After service, you shake hands at the door for 45 minutes. A woman tells you the sermon changed something in her. An older man grips both your hands and says you are the real thing. A young couple asks if you'll officiate their wedding. A teenager tells you this is the first place that ever felt safe. You thank them. You mean it. You don't mean it. Both things are true at the same time, and the distance between them is where you live now. The last car leaves the parking lot. You go back inside and sit in the front pew in the empty church. The roof doesn't leak anymore. The van runs. Your daughters have everything they need. The account at the other bank has a balance that would have seemed impossible to the man who sat in a hospital corridor at 19 and decided that staying was the most sacred thing a person could do. You are still staying. That's what you tell yourself. You show up every Sunday. You hold hands in emergency rooms. You write letters that changed lives. You are still here. You didn't start preaching for money. You sit with that for a long time in the empty church. Then you get up, turn off the lights, lock the door. Sunday comes again in 6 days.